Are you trying to maximize the dynamic range of your Fujifilm RAW files? Well, in today's video, I'm going to walk you through how I edit my Fujifilm RAW files in Lightroom. Specifically, how I use the graduated filter, luminance range mask, and filter adjustment brush to turn a picture that looks like this into this. Alright, let's get it. What's up guys, Reggie B Photo here and welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new, my name is Reggie Ballesteros and I'm a wedding photographer based in the San Francisco Bay Area. At this point, I've had multiple requests to do a video on how I edit my photos. So today, I'm going to show you guys a very useful editing technique that will help you maximize the dynamic range of your Fuji files in Lightroom. This technique uses Lightroom's graduated filter along with the luminance range mask and the filter adjustment brush tools in order to even out the exposure of a very high contrast scene. But before I show you this technique, there are a few things you have to set in camera to make sure that your image files retain the most information and yield the best possible results when editing. First, you must shoot in RAW. Only a RAW file will give you the dynamic range and exposure flexibility that's needed for these types of edits. A JPEG simply won't cut it here. Second, you must shoot at your camera's base ISO. For Fuji cameras, this is usually ISO 160 or 200 depending on the camera model that you have. A RAW file exposed at the camera's base ISO will give you the cleanest possible file as well as the most dynamic range possible with that specific camera. You might be tempted to shoot at the ISO L or ISO low settings of your camera, ISO 125, 100, or ISO 80, but these files are actually exposed at the base ISO and post-processed in camera to simulate the lower ISO that you chose. We want 100% unprocessed RAW files for max flexibility in post-production. Lastly, in order to retain the most information in your RAW file, you have to ensure that you do not clip the shadows or the highlights of your image. So to help you do this, enable both the histogram and the highlight warnings on your camera. And use these guys to ensure that you don't underexpose the shadows or overexpose the highlights past their respective clipping points. One important thing to note is that the histogram and the highlight warnings are based on the film simulation and the image quality settings that you set in your camera. What personally works for me is Pro Negative Standard with highlight set to -2 and the shadows left at 0. But feel free to experiment to see which settings give you the best results for your shooting style and your editing style. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, let's jump into Lightroom and edit a couple example photos. So in order to explain how to do this type of editing technique, I'm going to use two example photos that are taken at sunset with the subject was underexposed in order to try to maintain the highlights in the background. So first up is this engagement photo that I took in Tiburon, California. I took this photo approaching sunset time at around 5 o'clock p.m. and the exposure settings were 1/2500th of a second, a shot wide open at 1.4 at the base ISO of 160, and this was shot on my Fujifilm X-T3 with the 16mm 1.4 lens. So let's jump right in and start developing here. So first up, I apply my base preset. Before I continue, I'd like to let you know what my thoughts are on presets in general. So I believe that there is no such thing as a one-click preset. It just simply doesn't exist because you're not taking the same photo every single time over and over and over with the same lighting conditions. For me, a preset is just a way to add the HSL adjustments that I always apply to every single photo, the tone curve that I apply to every single photo, and some of the starting basic adjustments that I apply to every single photo. That way I just have the same starting point and I don't waste time having to input all those parameters for every single photo. So again, I start off with my preset here, and that actually uses the Pro Negative Standard color profile. And first things first is we're gonna bring up the exposure just a little bit, and then I'm gonna fix the white balance. Let's see. And for this one, I want to add a little bit more contrast. Actually, quite a bit. And then I'm going to bring the shadows back after. But first, I add some clarity just to add a little bit more texture and micro contrast to this photo. And right off the bat, I'm going to drop my highlights down to -100 to bring back the detail in the sky here. And to follow up with that, I'm actually going to push the shadows up to 85 to bring detail back in this brick. This might seem like a lot right now, but we're going to adjust that in a little bit after we throw on the graduated filter. So here I'm going to drop the black point down just a little bit to 15, and then now is a good time for me to adjust the crop a little bit. And here I'm going to just try to straighten up this top part of the tower, or whatever you call this. So now we're at a good point to actually start adding the graduated filter. So I'm going to take one and I have a preset called Burn Darken, which is basically negative 0.32 on the exposure. So what I'm going to do is actually adjust that to negative 0.5 here. We're going to drop that down pretty much over the entire sky. So it helps to have this overlay so you can kind of see where it's impacting here. And as you can see, it darkens a lot of the tower and it actually starts to darken the couple here a little bit, and we don't want that. So what we're going to do is turn on the luminance range mask, and this is going to help us to target specifically certain luminance values in the photo. And here we just want to target the brightest parts of the highlights. So if you hold down the Alt key and you just move it over, you can see the black is where the mask is going to be applied, and the white is going to be where the graduated filter is going to be affecting. So I'm going to put it around 30 here. As you can see, it doesn't affect as much of the tower or the couple. So we could stop right there, but I'm actually going to turn on the overlay again and brush in and just make sure to erase any part that is touching the couple, just because I don't want them to be affected by this darkening. Right here I'm going to erase that part and just make sure it's not on them. And then zoom back out. And now we're pretty close here. So you just want to look at the before and after right now. That's a big difference. And actually on every single photo that I edit, I actually put a slight graduated filter vignette. Instead of using the built-in effects post-crop vignetting, I actually just use a graduated filter on all four sides of the image just to kind of draw in the viewer's eye. Just going to put some on the left side right here, the right side, and a little bit on the bottom here. And that just kind of gives a little bit of focus for the viewer to be drawn into the main subject here. So here we're just gonna see if we want to adjust the exposure a little bit here. And now I actually have a little bit too much detail in this tower that's kind of taking away from the subject what I want to be the brightest. So I'm gonna drop down the shadows just a tad. And I think right here we're doing pretty good. And now I'm going to add my sharpening settings. If you haven't seen my sharpening video, check it out at the link above to kind of see an explanation of how I come up with these sharpening settings. So right here I've got amount to 100, radius to 0.9, details is 0, and we're going to kind of refine the mask right now. Zoom in right here, and it's like 70 is going to do it for me. And here you can see the before and after of this edited photo. And now I'm going to head over to the second example. This photo was taken on a fog bridge in the Embarcadero area of San Francisco for an engagement session, again at sunset time. The sun actually pretty much dipped below these buildings and the skyline already, so the light was going away pretty quickly, but I shot this at the base ISO also in order to be able to kind of just try to recover some of the detail in the sky in post-processing. Again, let's get started. I'm gonna add my preset here. Let me know down in the comments below if you guys would be interested in downloading my preset for a small fee, just because I put pretty much 5 years of work into fine-tuning this preset over the course of my professional wedding and portrait work. So we start with a preset, and now we're going to bring up the exposure a little bit just because it's a little dark for me, to about 0.9, and now you can see that the background is really getting away from us at this point. But before we kind of fix that, let's fix the white balance, and then I'm also going to fix the tint, and that gets us a little bit better here on the skin tones. Now I'm going to increase the contrast here to about 20, and want a little bit of clarity in here as well. 15. And now it's time to start working on the highlights, so let's drop that down to about -65 or so, and bring up the shadow a little bit in the face to 60. And now it's time to do a lot of the heavy lifting as far as the graduated filter is on this image. So I'm going to take graduated filter and drop it down kind of like to right here. And I'm going to adjust the exposure until I can kind of see that it's affecting it how I want to. So it's a little bit too much, but we're going to fix it with the range mask here. And then I'm actually going to try and hit some of the highlights too. Right. So this is a pretty aggressive filter. We're going to turn on the luminance range mask and fine tune this. So we're going to come back here and kind of bring it up. I'm probably going to just hone in just on really the sky. As you can see, that is a lot less aggressive. And now we want to make sure again to use the adjustment brush. Turn on O, press O for the overlay, and we're going to go use the adjustment brush and erase around the couple here. So we want to make sure they don't get darkened. Just paint in happy trees here. Alright, cool. Now I can kind of go back and add the kind of vignette elements that I usually add. Let's see. Just one right here. This one I'm going to add extra one at the top because I want to. So now we're pretty good here, and I actually want to kind of accentuate. It's a little too yellow for me, so I want to kind of accentuate the orange part of the sunset. So here we're going to get to the hue and just do -5 on the red, -5 on the orange. It's very subtle, but it's going to give us a little bit more redder tones on the overall sunset. So now I'm going to again add my sharpening preset and go in here and adjust the masking a little bit. And the noise is a little much for me, so I'm going to increase this to 10. Sometimes even if you shoot at base ISO, if you push the photo a lot like this, you'll need a little bit of noise reduction. So as you can see, the results are pretty amazing, especially for something that you can achieve on a Fujifilm X crop sensor. This isn't a full frame camera, this is just a crop sensor that we're making sure to expose at base ISO to have this much amount of raw flexibility. So I'm hoping you learned something new in this video. If you did and you want to see more editing videos like this one, hit that thumbs up button. If you have any special requests for future editing videos, let me know in the comments what type of photo you'd like to see edited. Or even better, if there's already a photo that you've seen on my website, on my Instagram, or another YouTube video and you want to see a breakdown of that edit, link it down in the comments down below. Please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I post a new Fujifilm or photography video every single week. If you want to see more of my photo work, then follow me on Instagram at RegibPhoto for a new post every single day. Alright, that's it for me. Remember to get out, go shoot, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Yeah!